friend and I were wondering, like, how different Zambia is from, like, America.
Well, Zambia is actually two different cultures based on money. There's one part that's urban in the cities, and those people, although they have rough lives, are not impossible lives. But the rural people who don't live in the cities have no roads, no electricity, no running water, and maybe 2 sets of clothing. If you were in Zambia, if you were in rural Zambia, one of the villages we work with, because you're a young woman, you would not be going to school. You would be out gathering firewood and water. You would go to school if you went at all, maybe 1 or 2 hours a day. And the rest of the time you would be working. You would expect to die somewhere in your late 30s of some easily preventable disease, usually malaria or typhoid or cholera, something like that. Because you would cook inside of a shed, you would have lung disease of some kind from breathing in the smoke. You would have your first kid probably at 17.
Oh, wow.
And you would probably have six to 8 kids during your lifetime unless you died in childbirth, which a lot of moms do. Out of those kids, you would expect only half of them to live to be 10 years old.
Oh my God.
I'm just 11. It's crazy. I'm 12.
I'm 11. I'm 10.
Definitely.
Yeah, so it's a different kind of a place than where we live.
Way different.
Thank
I'm
you.
12, so I'm like kind of
Is
past
there
the
anybody
dying
else got
part.
any other questions?
I'm hoping I could.
Shh, guys.
Hey,
I was wondering, what makes Zambia such a deadly place to live in? Like,
Zambia has several things in its history that worked against it. The first one is its geography, because it's so high and because it's so close to the equator. It doesn't get enough wind for wind power, doesn't have enough direct sunlight for solar power. When the British lived there, their idea was to keep the native people down. So when the British left in the 60s, there were less than 30 people in all of Zambia who'd ever gone to college. They had no engineers, they had very few teachers, so they had to build their country from the ground up. So if you think of the United States, it took us, 250 years to get here, and their country's really only about 35 years old. So they're building it from the ground up. All the resources that they had, the copper and the gold and that stuff, was taken away by the British, and they gave the colony nothing back. In the end of the 60s, Zambia is completely landlocked, has no ocean, so everything has to be imported through other countries. Because Zambia had a history of decent, stable political life, they began to host the rebel groups from the surrounding countries that were fighting for independence. So the ANC, for instance, had their headquarters in Zambia. The group that was fighting in Mozambique, the group that was fighting in Angola. So the surrounding countries that were run by the colonial powers would not allow Zambia access to the ocean, so they had to become 100% self-sufficient. What's interesting about Zambia is they just recently had an election, and it was a peaceful election and a transfer of power from one party to another. And this is their 4th election that they transferred power. Completely unheard of in sub-Saharan Africa except for South Africa. So Zambia is one of the most politically stable countries, even though it's ranked as one of the poorest countries on earth.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.